Hey everyone, it's Simon Hurley from Inklips and welcome to another video. Now in today's video, I wanted to go through some of my top 10 favorite card making supplies, or kind of categories with a couple of supplies in each one that you need to get started with card making, or some things you might want to add on later on that are really great in your collection. I've been doing this for about 5 years now, and I've really grown to know what I love and what I don't love, and I've had the privilege of testing out lots of different supplies from a bunch of different companies, and in today's video, I've compiled all my favorites into one video. So if you guys are starting out with card making, or you're looking to add to your collection but you want some opinions, this is the video for you. So for cardstock, you really need a great white cardstock to start out with, and I really only started with white. You can add black and craft later on in your collection, but this is a huge staple for me, and I love my Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock. This is a great 110-pound cardstock, so it's really nice and thick weight, and it's 8.5 by 11, so you can cut it down to top folding cards, side folding cards, card panels, or any interactive card that you want. I really wanted to give that creative freedom when you're creating. And also, it's a super smooth cardstock that takes inks really nicely, which I really wanted to make sure that it would do that. So these are two cards that I created with using just my Stark White cardstock. It's a super bright white, so the card bases are really nice and bright white, but then you're able to throw down a ton of ink at it and not have it really warp the cardstock or ruin it at all. So this is a great all-around white cardstock. I know it's a little biased because it's my cardstock, but I did really pick the one that I loved. It's manufactured for us by Nina, and they do a really great job. It's not the Nina Solar White, it's actually a different one that I found that I liked even a little bit better. Now, second in the cardstock category, sometimes you need to upgrade to a watercolor cardstock if you're really throwing tons of water at it. My cardstock can take a little bit of water, but if you're really going water heavy, I'd recommend having a great watercolor cardstock. I like this one from Ranger or Tim Holtz, the Distress Watercolor cardstock, and this is nice because it has a textured side on it and a smooth side. I prefer the smooth side when I'm stamping, and then the textured side I prefer when I'm just creating a watercolor background. This is super nice because it matches that bright white intensity of my Stark White cardstock, so you can pair them together if you're making a card base with that and a panel with this. Now, the next thing that's pretty important to have is a good paper trimmer and a couple good pairs of scissors. This is really important when you're card making if you want a paper trimmer to get a really nice straight line on a sheet of cardstock, and for scissors to do some fussy cutting or things like that on your cards. Now, trimmers have been a little bit difficult for me over the years to find a good one. I have been through tons of trimmers, but I've stuck with this one for a couple of years and have absolutely loved it. This is the Tim Holtz and Tonic Guillotine Trimmer. It does a really great job. I love these black details here. There's also a tonic one that is orange. But what's really nice about this is that you can cut an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock or a 12 by 12 sheet. It also has an arm that can attach. It's underneath here, and all you have to do is pull this piece out, and then you can attach it right onto the side here and get extra measurements if you would like to. But I like that it goes out to 6 inches because that's usually all I need for card making. And then I have a little piece of tape here that doesn't come with your machine, but I taped it off at 4 1/4 so I can have that easy measurement for card making. So what I really like about the trimmer is the guillotine blade. It really makes it super easy to cut your cards. So I'm going to line it up at my little tape mark there, which is 4 1/4. It's got this hand guide which helps you hold the paper down. So you're going to want to press those two pieces, and it keeps your fingers safe too. And then just apply pressure, and you can cut right down. And it really cuts super smooth. No more little like hanging fuzzies on the edge. And I've had this for a long time, and it hasn't dulled over time. It kind of sharpens as you go, actually, when you add that friction to it each time that it goes down. And since it's that guillotine, it's going to cut straight every single time. Some of the other trimmers that are sliding, I had a little bit of difficulties with kind of getting a straight line every single time, but this hasn't failed me yet. So I really do appreciate that. And it's kind of nice and compact. That handle can be removed. So if you want to travel with this, you can. But there's also another littler guillotine trimmer. I keep this one on my desk if I'm doing cards, and I just want to cut like little slivers off of cards or like little sentiment strips. I'll usually do that with this trimmer. You can get super fine details or some larger strips with it. But what's really nice about this one is it's just compact, so if you like to travel or things like that, this is going to be a great trimmer for you. Now, it can't cut that full 8.5 by 11 sheet the long way or the 12 by 12 sheet, but it's a great compact trimmer to have on your desk. I recommend getting it second, so investing in that larger one first, because you can do a lot more with that. but this one is a great one to add onto your collection later on. Now, when it comes to scissors, there's two that I'm in love with that haven't failed me yet and do a really great job in my craft room, and I find myself reaching for these the most often. This one is a Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. It's a smaller version of the scissors, which I really like, so it's really great for fussy cutting, but I like that Spring Assist for when I am doing any fussy cutting because it really kind of makes your hands not tired at all. It opens up for you and does most of the work, but it's that nice sharp blade as well, so it does a really great job getting in those tiny details when I'm fussy cutting. And then the other scissors that I really like are these Tim Holtz and Tonic scissors. These are like a micro serrated scissors, and they're non-stick as well. This is, I believe, the 9-inch shears. I absolutely love these, and I would recommend getting the larger version in these scissors. I'm not a huge fan of them with fussy cutting, but with cutting larger things like packages open or even like cutting straight across a card, it's going to really hold up over time. They're super sharp blades since they're micro serrated, and they don't really dull over time, which I really appreciate. Oh, another thing I have to mention is the handle on these are just absolutely perfect. So if you have some larger fingers or you want to fit all your fingers inside without getting tired, it's also got that nice cush grip too, so it's not going to hurt your fingers over time, which has been super important to me, and this pair of scissors is really great for that. Now, number 3 is a stamping tool and some acrylic blocks. This is really important if you're going into the stamping route of card making and you want to do stamping on all of your projects. Now, I'd recommend investing in a stamping tool like the Misty. This one happens to my favorite. It's the original size Misty. A lot of people ask me whether the mini or the original is better. I like the original just because you could do more things with it. You could fit a larger sheet of cardstock in it, but not only that, there's also products like the Gina K Wreath Builder and the Concord & Knight Turnabout stamps that work perfectly inside this size Misty and don't really work in the smaller one. So that's something to think about when you're investing in this. But I have to say, one of the things about the Misty that really helped me out is I am not a great stamper, and I cannot tell you how many projects that I ruined before I got the Misty. If I'm ever unsure about what I'm about to stamp, or if I've almost finished a project, this is really great to use. Whether it's a big stamp or a small sentiment you're adding at the last second, this is going to make sure that you can stamp over it twice, do some cool techniques and things like that. So this Misty has saved my life. You just add your stamps in here, pick them up with the acrylic side, and then you can stamp down and get going with your project, which is really great. There's, of course, a couple stamping tools on the market. This one happens to be my favorite, but you could definitely choose which one you like the best. Now, acrylic blocks are also important to have. If you don't want to pull out your Misty every time you do your stamping, these are important. You can just stick a stamp right down to here and stamp it down onto your surface. And there's two different kinds. There's a thicker acrylic block and a thinner one like this. Now, it's all personal preference when it comes to this. These thicker ones kind of have grooves in some of them. I'll link down to some that I really love. But what's nice about this is you can get a really great grip in this and put on your stamp. Now, when they're thicker acrylic blocks like this, I don't love to go too large with the acrylic block because then sometimes I find you can't get the middle stamps really nicely because there's no give to them. So that's when I really like these thinner acrylic blocks and some of these larger, kind of more rectangle sizes like this. It's because they have a little bit more give to them, and so you're easily able to apply that pressure into the center or anywhere on the block and make sure it's all stamped nicely. So kind of two differences. I really like both. This one I like because it has a little bit better of a grip, and this one, again, that pressure really counts. Okay, so let's move on to adhesives. Now, this one's a little bit bigger of a category because there's lots of different adhesives you can use on your cards, whether it's personal preference or different use case scenarios you might want to have on hand. So let's start off with a tape runner, because this is probably what I use most often to adhere card layers together or anything like that. I really do prefer this adhesive for adhering large panels like that. Now, this is the Thermo Web tape runner. What I really like about this is that you're able to apply the tape down. I prefer when it's in lines like this, but if you prefer the dot runners, that's totally up to you. I just prefer this because I think that it's a little bit of a stronger bond sometimes. What I like about this is that it's easy to stop and start, and also it has kind of that pivot edge to it. So you're able to get around edges. If you're going on the edge of a card like this, you can go right around there and kind of pivot right around the edge, which is super nice without having to lift up your tape runner. And what I also like about this is that it has tape runner refills you can purchase too, so you're not wasting plastic or anything like that. You can easily replace this right inside of here and keep going with your card making, which I really appreciate. Now, also for liquid adhesive, I like the Distress Collage Medium Matte. This is super nice. It comes in a 1 ounce bottle. You can get it in a larger jar. But what I really like about this adhesive is it's great for sequins. That's what I use it for most often because it's this kind of white adhesive. It's really nice and thick adhesive, so you can kind of lay it down and it's going to dry clear. It has a little bit of a glossy coat right now, but it's going to dry matte and clear on your project. So you're not going to be able to see it if any oozes out of the edge and you make any mistakes like that. I use this most for adhering little elements like die cuts or sequins onto my card because you get a little bit of wiggle room before it completely dries on your card. What I like about this too is it's got that nice fine tip on it, so you're able to get kind of more finer areas if I'm doing die cuts or things like that on my project with adhesive. Now for masking tape, purple tape definitely has to be my favorite. I use this for basically everyday use if I don't want to rip my cardstock. It's a low tack tape. This is the 1/4 of an inch version, but they also have a larger 1/2 an inch version, which is great for masking larger backgrounds, but I just like this thinner one for adhering die cuts down for the time being, or kind of taping things together or masking things off quickly. This is a really great tape to do that. It's really easy to tear in half if you want to for die cuts, but then also when you stick it on your card like this, you can press it down, make sure it's nice and pressed down, but then all I need to do is peel it off slowly, and then it's not going to rip my cardstock. There's no ripping, and you can reuse this piece of tape as well if you want to. Now lastly, let's talk about some foam tapes. This is from the Letter It adhesive line from Ranger. I like these because you can buy kind of smaller varieties. So you have black foam, that clear foam, and the white foam. What's most unique about this is the clear foam. I really love this stuff for putting underneath something that you don't want to be visible if you're looking from the side and you don't want it to be visible. This is great if it's a smaller image or anything like that. Really great foam to use. And then you have white and black. And what I love about these two is that they're a little bit squishier than some other foam tapes on the market. So when they're going through the mail, they're able to squish down rather than kind of pressing down on a firm foam tape and pushing in the cardstock. So this is really great whether you have a black piece of cardstock or a white piece of cardstock that you're adhering to your piece. This is a really great foam tape to lift off your panel and get a little bit of dimension on your cards. Now let's talk about a basic black ink and a good stamp cleaner that's going to clean that ink off your stamps. It's really important to have a good black ink because I use it on every single project, and then taking care of your stamps is also important. So a good stamp cleaner is definitely necessary. A good black ink that I really love for watercoloring and all my waterproof needs, I use Jet Black Archival ink. I use water on almost every one of my projects with my inks, and having this Jet Black Archival to stamp down and make sure that it's not going to run with my water is really important to me. And for anything else, like if I'm using Copics and doing coloring like that, or if I'm using Gamsol and I want to make sure that nothing is going to bleed, I'll use the scrapbook.com black hybrid ink, and that is perfect to make sure that nothing like that will bleed on your cards. A good stamp cleaner is the Archival ink stamp cleaner. Now I only use this with the black inks because my Simon Hurley Create inks don't really stain your stamps and you just need water, but with the black ink you need a good Archival ink cleaner, and this will clean it off nicely. It'll still leave a little bit of staining to your clear stamps, but that's a-okay. A stained stamp is a loved stamp. Now I use the Rub It Scrub It pad to make sure that my stamps stay nice and clean, so when they're on the acrylic block, all I need to do is just take the stamp and rub it right into here. And what this is, it's a foam base, so it's a really nice sturdy foam base there with this kind of material on top that's going to get all of that ink out of there. It's not a fuzzy material, so none of the fuzzies are going to come off, which I find happens to some of the other ones on the market. What I like about this is I just take a little bit of that stamp cleaner from the dauber. I'm able to clean my stamp off easily by rubbing it onto the surface, and I like that this is open, so you don't have to put a lid on it and make it stinky. It's going to air dry out, and it's going to keep this smelling nice and good. It's really easy to clean off your stamps with it. Now one thing that's on my list that's really important is colored inks. Now for me this is super important because I use these in every single card. For you, you might want to add these a little bit later on if you don't use colored inks nearly as much as I do. But for creating backgrounds or doing different techniques of blending and stamping, I use colored inks a lot. And I love my new Simon Hurley Create inks. These are really awesome because they stamp really nicely, and they also do some really cool techniques like blending and watercoloring. So whether I'm dipping it in to create a watercolor background or doing some really cool stamping on my card, this is a great all-around ink that you can have on your desk for all purposes, which I really like, and that's why I formulated that way. Now to go along with your inks, I like the Ranger Mini Ink Blending Tools. These help to create a background when you're doing your ink blending. Now I recommend these. I love the handle on these, and I found that nothing nothing of the foam really compares with other brands. I've tried sponges, I've tried all different types of things, and this foam doesn't really seep the ink in, but it just kind of holds it on the outside, so you're able to apply lots of ink onto your surface at once, which I really like. Now, I have one for each color in my line, but you could also just have one for each color family and just have one sponge for kind of a whole array of yellows, or you can have two tools and have each ink have a separate foam underneath the ink pad. You can store it under here with a piece of Velcro, and then when you need that, you can switch it out on your tool. The one thing that I find that's difficult about that is your fingers get a little bit inky, so I recommend having a couple different tools for each color family at least when you're switching these out. And these really help create different colored backgrounds, which I absolutely love. And with these, whether you're going through a stencil or straight to paper, you get a really nice solid color without having to put too much effort in when you're blending, and that's what I really love about these. I also love these little mini detail blending tools as well. They come in a larger pack and they're dual-ended, so you're able to have two different colors on each side. What I really love about these is if you're using a stencil that you need to get in the details of or anything like that, little small areas, these are really great for covering those and getting into those tiny areas to add your ink. Now, to go along with your inks, I also find that a distress sprayer and a water brush is pretty important in the creating because they react with water, so you want to take advantage of all the different techniques you can do. This distress sprayer I like because when you spray it once, you get a really nice fine mist over the surface, and when you kind of lightly push on the trigger like this, it sprays down little droplets and you can get kind of larger effects like that, which I really love. And I also like the detail water brush from Tim Holtz. I find the bristles on this are just perfect. They come to a really nice point so you can get in some fine areas, and this also feeds the water to you, so instead of having a dish of water on your desk, I find this is super easy for on the go, or if you're kind of lazy like me and don't want to have to keep dipping it into the water, it feeds the water right to the brush, which I love. A good heat tool is necessary if you're an impatient crafter like me or you want to do heat embossing. This is really important for your crafting. So I really like this Wagner heat tool. I like this because it has a really nice fine nozzle, so if you're doing heat embossing, this is going to be perfect for you. It really directs the heat, heats up your paper quickly, and does that heat embossing nicely. And I really like that because of this. I like that it has a little stand too, so it's going to keep this really hot surface off of your desk. So it's a really powerful tool. I recommend investing in it because it's going to save you lots of time in the long run, drawing lots of projects. Now, I also like the Ranger Heated Craft Tool, and why I recommend this is because if you like inks and paints, this is going to be your heat tool rather than this one. This one's great at heat embossing. This one doesn't heat emboss as well because it doesn't have as focused of a heat source, but that's really good that it doesn't have that focused heat when you're heating up inks or paints. It's really nice quiet heat tool, so if you craft at night, it's not going to wake up the whole family, and also since it doesn't have that really directed heat, it's not going to burn your paper as easily as you're drying your inks and paints, and it's not going to push around your inks and paints, which is really important to me when I'm heating that up. So if you want to add this to your collection later on, or if you don't even like heat embossing and you just want to stick with this one for your inks and paints, it's a really great craft tool for that. Now, one thing that I recommend buying with your heat tool is some heat embossing powders. These are so fun and magical, and they do some really cool techniques. Now, I would start off with white and clear. I put mine in these large containers, so they're really easy to apply to my projects, but I use these super often for different techniques and really cool looks on your cards. It adds a whole another layer of dimension, and if you want to do fun techniques, this is really the way to go. You're also going to need a clear embossing ink and a powder tool to get rid of any static before you start your stamping. I'll link to a video that I did on screen right now showing the basics of heat embossing, but basically it's just this really magical powder that when you heat it, it turns to almost a plastic surface, and it's really great for techniques and stamping and different things like that. You can get some really awesome looks. Now, I just did a video on crafting surfaces, and I'll link the much more in-depth video on screen right now, but I wanted to share them in today's video too very quickly. So here is the Ranger Ink Essentials craft sheet. You can use it with inks, paints, or anything like that, and it's going to clean off really nicely, and alcohol inks work on this as well. So you're able to easily create any backgrounds by laying this down on your surface. If you're crafting on your dining room table or anything like that, it's easy to roll up and store away as well, which I really appreciate. Now, one thing that I love about this mat as well is on the Ranger site, you're able to order a custom size. So if you want to cover your whole desk and your crafting surface with this awesome craft sheet, you definitely can do that if you love paint pouring or anything like that that's super messy and you want to cover your whole surface. I totally understand you. I'll leave a link down below where you can do that. Now, another surface that I really like is the Tim Holtz and Tonic Studios glass medium mat. This is a really great surface to work at. You can throw all your mediums on here as well as cut on this surface. So again, if you're working on your dining room table, but you really need that surface to cut on as well, this is a great surface to do that, as well as apply your inks and paints and all of that on top. top. And it also has a little bit of a craft sheet over here in the corner. I lost mine, but it sticks down to this surface, and you can use all your inks and paints on there as well. So this is just a great all-around crafting surface. If you're a card maker and you like to make sure that you have that grid lines and cutting lines as well, this is a great surface for you. And of course, the station is one of my favorite tools as well. This is a newer one, but it's really great to hold down your stencils rather than using tape and almost accidentally ripping your project several times. It's easy to lift those magnets, move them around, and create some really beautiful projects with stencils, and also hold things down when they're gluing. There's really a ton of uses for this as well. It's a really great surface to use on top of the others and have those magnets to kind of work as almost an extra set of hands, which I think as crafters, we all need. Now, die cutting adds a whole nother layer of dimension and embellishments to your cards. And if you're gonna get into die cutting, I definitely recommend the Gemini Junior by the Crafter's Companion. This is by far the best die cutting machine that I have used on the market. I have tested a bunch of different die cutting machines and have ended up on this one over time. You do need a power outlet to plug it into from the back. But what I really love about this is you turn the power on and feed your sandwich right through. It carries it right through for you, and you don't have to crank any machines. So if you have any problems with arthritis or anything like that in your hands, some of those crank machines can be a little bit difficult. Even if you don't, it's a little bit difficult to push through. And so having this to kind of pull it through for you, and it die cuts beautifully every time. Even the most delicate and intricate dies, it cuts really nicely. So I really do recommend this machine. I find the motor in it is super strong, and those rollers really do help die cut beautifully every single time, which I love. The last thing on my list is stamps, dies, stencils, and other kind of media products that you kind of have to choose what you want to buy on your own. These are more design style kind of products. Whether you like critters or flowers or things like that, you really have to kind of pick your own style. I'm not going to recommend any style to you. Now, I do have my own line of products with Ranger called Simon Hurley Create. These are my own line of stamps, stencils, and background stamps, which I really love. They're in my own kind of fun, playful style. I hand drew the clear stamp sets. So if you're into this kind of more fun and playful critter, kind of people style to color in, I really do recommend my stamps, and I'll leave a link down below to my full product line that you guys can check out. And there's also some fun products with florals as well. So if you like kind of the flower maker look for a more realistic look, or these fun background stamps as well. But I'm gonna leave that totally up to you. It depends what your style is and what you're really looking for. All right, so that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed my list of my favorite kind of must-have card making supplies for my craft room. I hope you learned a little bit more, and if you're looking for something in particular, again, there will be links down below to that blog post, where that'll be full supplies list over at my blog with pictures and links to multiple sources, so you can find everything you want at your favorite shopping stores. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below to never miss another video like this one from me. And be sure to leave a comment down below letting me know some of your favorite card making supplies that you cannot live without. I cannot wait to chat with you guys down there. It's always tons of fun talking to you guys. And without further ado, I'll see you all very soon for another card making and crafting video. Have a great day. Bye.